So here's what I wish somebody told me before I became a freelancer. Taxes suck. They just suck. Let me back up a little bit. My name is Matt Kenyon, if we haven't met, and I'm a full-time freelancer. And I'm starting this channel as a very chill, conversational, low cortisol way as I walk around the trail and kind of go about my life to talk about some of the experiences and the expertise that I've picked up along the way of being a full-time freelancer. And the idea is that hopefully I can help you either start your freelance career, or if you're already a freelancer, hopefully help you make the most out of that. Because I think that freelancing is truly the future. I think that it's one of the best ways to design the ideal life, truly. And so I'm very passionate about it, but there are some things that I wish I knew before I got into this line of work that I wish someone had told me, and so I want to tell you. And the first thing is, as I mentioned, taxes. Man, when you are a W-2 employee and you're working a 9-to-5, you pay taxes, and you know that you pay taxes psychologically, but you don't really feel the taxes come out of your paycheck because you just feel your money hit the bank account and you regard that as your salary and you don't even consider your taxes, but of course you have taxes coming out of every paycheck. And when you're a freelancer, you are 100% responsible for paying your own taxes. And I think I knew that, intellectually, but I didn't really consider just how much that was going to suck. Because as a freelancer, you're also responsible for paying more taxes. Your employer pays a portion of your taxes, and when you're a freelancer, you're responsible for paying all your taxes. And so I live in Florida. I'm not a tax advisor, so don't take this as gospel, but I live in Florida, and I pretty much have to put away about a quarter of every cent that the business takes in. I'm putting away about a quarter of that. And that was a gut punch when I first became a freelancer. That was really rough, because you see all this money coming in and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. I can do this. Like, I can be a freelancer. Like, this is great. And then you have to just mentally earmark it and say, okay, this is 25% of all of this is going to the government. Which leads me to the next thing that I wish someone had told me, is just how important it is to find a good CPA. Not just a CPA, a good CPA. My first CPA that I had was a great guy, like solid dude. I liked him, but he would sort of expect me to understand accounting terms, and he would talk to me like I was an expert. And so he would say stuff like, well, it's almost tax time. Have you made any contributions to your SEP IRA? And I'm just like, my brother in Christ, like, I don't know what any of those words mean. Like, I am hiring you to help me understand what I need to be doing. And that's when I realized that there's a really big difference between a CPA that just files your taxes every year. I can do that with TurboTax. I can do that with ChatGPT. I don't need to hire someone to do that. And there's a difference between that and a CPA who will actually be a tax strategist for you. Meaning someone that will sit with you and that will look at all your options and say, well, have you thought about this investment vessel? Have you thought about restructuring as an S Corp? Have you thought about, a solo 401k, a SEP IRA? Have you thought about hiring this person to reduce your tax burden? There's all sorts of things that you can do. And so you need to find someone who will help you be a tax strategist, or will be a tax strategist on your behalf, not just someone who files your return for you. That's a huge, huge missed opportunity. And I imagine people are way overpaying in taxes because of this very thing. Now, I want to talk about another thing that I wish someone told me, and I'm going to switch to a kind of a positive here. And by the way, if you like this, like it, subscribe. Again, I already run a YouTube channel. I'm not trying to edit, 2 videos, so this is going to be very conversational, just like we're talking. And this is just as much therapeutic for me as I hope it's helpful for you to share all this stuff. But the next thing is more of a positive, is once you become a freelancer, you will become unemployable in the best way. And I don't mean unemployable in the sense that you won't have the experience to get a job, because I actually think that being a freelancer makes you a very marketable person and puts you in a very enviable position. I mean, psychologically, I could not imagine ever going back to an office, to a 9-to-5 office where a boss has, a boss has authority over my schedule. A boss can dictate whether I can or can't go see my kid at his school play in the middle of the day. Like, I just couldn't imagine that. And I think that people who are more entrepreneurial and people who have started their freelance journey can probably relate to this, where that once you go down this path, you're never going back to an office. Like, I'm never going back to an office. At least that's how I feel right now. That could change, but there's just so many benefits to the freedom and the autonomy that you have as a freelancer that you truly will. I mean, like, for me, I would support my family, but if I lost all my clients today, I feel like I would do everything in my power to go get more clients or go learn another skill before I would ever go back to a 9-to-5 office job. And that's just me personally. The next thing that I wish someone would have told me as a freelancer, it's getting dark here. I'm going on the trail here in lovely Florida. Finally cool enough to hit the trail, hitting the dark spot here. Something that I wish someone else would have told me is that nothing is certain. Nothing is certain when you are a freelancer, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. I'll give you a perfect example. So I was working with a client, and my role is I am a digital marketing consultant, and I specialize in helping brands get found on Google and AI assistants like ChatGPT. And I also help brands implement AI in their organizations. So I was working with a client. This was several years ago, and she was, very pleased with the work, and she was, everything was great. And she said, Matt, we have a lot of plans for you. We want you to stay on. We want you to stay on for 6 months, maybe even a year. And I was just like, great, that's awesome. I love stable clients. That's always great. And then she said, what do you think about maybe coming on full time? And I said, I consider it, but I really kind of value my freedom. And so then I was like, okay, I kind of came back and said, I think I'm going to stay freelance, but I appreciate the offer, all this sort of thing. So, well, it turns out that a couple weeks later, this person who had wanted me to come on full time had herself left the organization, and then a new person came in and basically called me on a meeting and said, all of a sudden, Matt, I'm so sorry, but you are no longer needed. We're bringing all of your duties, your SEO and digital marketing duties in-house. And I was I was down a client. And so literally in the span of like a week, it went from, we want you long-term, to, oh, why don't you come on full-time, to, oh, now you're actually just like fired forever. And so, I mean, it was fine, and it was totally fine. The person who, my contact over at the, at that business, obviously she was looking out for herself, and she didn't do anything wrong, but it was just one of those things where, as a freelancer, you have to be a free agent. You have to look out for yourself. And I know it sounds selfish and I know it sounds kind of harsh, but you have to literally look out for your interests above everyone else's. And you have to expect that that there's going to be turbulence, and that you really have to anticipate, like, oh, there's a puppers. So yeah, nothing is certain, expect the unexpected. Another thing that I wish someone had told me is that I would say, even though they might not admit it, I would say about half of your client relationships are, how should I say this, are held together by how you make the client feel. And I know that we all want to think that, no, like, our clients hire us because we do great work. And yes, I would hope that you do great work at whatever you are a freelancer at. But honestly, I think a lot of my clients keep me on just because I think I'm a pretty easy guy to work with. Like, I feel like I'm communicative. I try to take ownership if I make a mistake. I try to make people laugh. I try to, add some humor and levity and make their day a little better. Whenever I get the chance, I try to make them look good in front of their boss. So these are all things that humans are very emotional creatures, and we make decisions based on a lot of emotion. And I genuinely believe that if you were to have a person who was a extremely talented A+ performer, but was just a jerk, like just the worst to work with, I think that they would be passed over in favor of someone who's maybe 6 out of 10 in terms of their skill level and talent, but is just a delight to have on the team and a delight to work with. And I mean, I would hope that I would be someone that could do both, but I just find that that's a huge portion of how well you'll succeed as a freelancer is how you make your clients feel. And it's just something important to know. Another thing that is a tried and true principle that I wish someone had told me, or at least if someone told me, I wish I'd internalized it better, is that if the client is hard to sell, they're going to be hard to please. So what I mean by that is if there's a client that is just, it's like sand in the gears trying to get the deal closed, right? It is like they just are pushing back on everything. They're nickel and diming everything. I think we think to ourselves, okay, once this deal gets over the line and I start working with them, they're gonna see just how good of a worker I am and how talented I am, and I'm gonna win them over. At least that's how I feel. Without fail, every single one of the clients that have nickeled and dimed me, that have pushed back on my skill set, or kind of have this sort of sense of trepidation, or I don't know, you better prove yourself, I guess we'll give you a chance, but you better prove yourself, that whole mindset, man. Every time I have tried to work with those clients, I have tried to win them over, and it has never worked. They will never be pleased. They will never be happy. The people that come to me for the type of service that I offer, my new rule is I'm not trying to sell you on the importance of the service that I offer. Maybe I have to sell you on my competence, but I'm not going to sell you on the importance of SEO. You have to come to me fully realizing that SEO is important and you need it for your business. And if you are not in that place, then I wish you well, but we are not in a place where we need to work together. Oh, got some ducks. There's the ducks. I love the ducks. I was telling my wife the other day, I feel like ducks are the most handsome of all the birds. Just not the most elegant, not the most ferocious, not the most impressive, but just the most handsome, Drop me a comment if you think ducks are handsome. If a client is nickel and diming you, if a client is pushing back on everything you're saying or doing, if your client is asking for ironclad guarantees of things that you can't guarantee, it's not gonna end well. It's just not gonna end well. Next thing that I wish someone told me is, you might not experience this, but I have a lot of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of days where I wake up and I really struggle, and I, you know, talk to my wife, or I'll sort of think to myself, like, is what I'm offering really worth it? Like, am I just a fraud? Like, can I really be asking people to pay me money to do the things that I do? Like, I really struggle with that. And I don't know if that's normal, but it definitely got ramped up once I went freelance, especially full-time freelance. And yeah, it's something that I just kind of have to push through. I have to push through every day, because what am I gonna do? Just give up? I'm not gonna give up. So you gotta keep going. The next thing that I wish someone told me is just how important it is to target rich people. That sounds overly simplistic, but hear me out, right? So I've heard Alex Hormozy talk a little bit about this, but it really kind of clicked with me. So let's say I wanted to work with a plumber, and this plumber does $1 million in revenue a year, top line revenue, right? And you know, it's going to be a smaller website, it's going to be a smaller client, it's going to be a smaller project for, you know, SEO and digital marketing, things like that. But let's say, okay, so take that, right? Take that for example. Now let's say I want to work with a business-to-business, B2B software company, right? Which is normally what I work with, because that's my background. That's where I earned my stripes in marketing, was I worked for a B2B SaaS company for 5 years. So let's say I want to work for that company, and their top line revenue is $30 million. So the amount of effort that it takes to go from a plumber to a B2B SaaS company, I would say it probably would take me like anywhere between 20 to 30% more effort, right? Yet, at the same time, that's 30 times more budget, okay? And I can guarantee you they're gonna be much more willing to put budget into digital marketing, into SEO. So whatever you do, it could be digital marketing, it could be copywriting, it could be logo design, it could be video editing, whatever it is, my encouragement to you would be, yes, if you need to take on some smaller gigs in the beginning to build up your portfolio, absolutely do so. But as soon as you can, start targeting brands or individuals with money, with revenue. The bigger the better, okay? The bigger enterprise clients, the better. And I know you're like, okay, easier said than done, but it can be done. The key is to not get stuck in the low budget loop, okay? I'm calling it the low budget loop, and here's what it looks like. I work with a nonprofit, right? The nonprofit, I do a great job on the nonprofit site. Now they're a nonprofit. They can't pay me what I'm worth, probably. They're gonna be paying me, you know, just like a fourth of probably what I would want, which has actually happened because I've worked with a nonprofit before. And this is what happened. You do a great job on the nonprofit website, and then the nonprofits start telling all their nonprofit friends, hey, you gotta hire Matt, or you gotta hire such and such, because you know they did my logo, or they did my SEO, or they did my website, and it was so good. So then what happens? You see where I'm going here. You become the nonprofit guy or the nonprofit girl. And so everyone comes to you with nonprofit jobs, and you want to say yes because you want to be a freelancer. And this is how you become a freelancer. You say yes to jobs. But what happens? Every job that you say yes to, you're saying no to another much more high-paying gig. Every job for the nonprofit that you take on are hours that you can't be prospecting for higher value gigs. And so that's really, really important, and something that takes a lot of courage, because you have to say no, and that kind of hurts, and that's scary, especially when you're starting out. They have to come to you and you have to say, hey, you want to work this job? And you have to say, honestly, no, I can't right now. It's not really something that I can take on at the moment. And it kind of hurts, and it kind of feels scary, but it's really, really important that you target those kind of people. And then the last thing I'm going to give you, because it's getting dark, I may make a follow-up to this video, but the last thing I'll say is don't charge hourly. It's a very simple thing, but do not charge hourly. There's no reason to ever charge hourly. Charging hourly essentially punishes you for your expertise. When I first started auditing a website and providing value through digital marketing consulting, took a certain amount of time, right? And I would charge hourly. And then what happened was I started getting a lot better. I started getting a lot faster. My expertise I was growing in my expertise and my experience, and I just started noticing patterns, and I started being able to move and deliver things much faster. And I started realizing, okay, this hourly thing absolutely makes no sense, because I'm essentially being punished for my efficiency. I'm being punished for my gains in speed. I'm investing hundreds of dollars every month in software that helps me do my job faster, and I'm getting paid less because it takes me less time. Like, makes absolutely no sense. So my recommendation to you is don't even let hourly be on the table. Even if you're like a consultant, even if you're someone who comes in and meets with people, productize your deliverables, or productize your offerings. I just do not think anybody should do hourly. I don't think there's any scenario where it makes sense. I think it's much better to do project-based pricing. Okay, let me know in the comments, what do you want me to cover next? I got a lot of ideas. I got a lot of stuff we could talk about. We could talk about red flags with clients. We could talk about negotiating. We could talk about client horror stories. We could talk about, my internal, administrative stack, Notion and Claude and Monday.com and Google Docs, all that boring stuff, but very important stuff. We could talk about invoicing, getting paid, lots of stuff we could talk about. Let me know. Leave a comment. Hope to see you soon. Bye.